welcome to the third installment of You Got, Sophia's Game of Thrones podcast, a Southgate Media Group production. My name is Sophia Porter, your humblest of humble hosts, and today we're talking about the second episode of Season 5, titled The House of Black and White, and I am over the moon because the Faceless Men are absolutely my favorite religious order in A Song of Ice and Fire, and yes, they are indeed religious, but we'll get to that later because once again I have a guest to introduce. You may know him, probably because he was on just last week, but that shouldn't deter you from listening because his knowledge of Game of Thrones can only be paralleled by my own. It's Kyle Tremblay. Hi, Kyle.
Sophia, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm so glad that within your introduction you contradicted your own statement about being the humblest of humble hosts.
I'm just really, I know.
It's an honor to be here.
It's so great to have you. It's been so long since we've last heard your voice.
I feel like this might be a bad sign for you because I would refer to myself as sort of the break glass in case of emergency guest in that I'm always up for talking Game of Thrones with you, and now I've been used twice in the first 2 weeks of your podcast.
Well,
I don't know what's going on.
Last week went so well, I figured why not stay where you're strongest? I mean, obviously I learned that from playing Dragon Age Inquisition, but, still, it's a skill, and next week I'll actually have guests sorted out, but this week it came on me really quickly, and I was like, oh god, and someone canceled, and then another person canceled, I was like, you know what, Kyle, why not?
Well, I am in residence at your stronghold in Haven. Well, now not in Haven.
Skyhold, sir.
Skyhold, sorry. I'm not as up on Inquisition as you. I played it a little while back, but
it's all right. So let's dive right in. I made you answer two somewhat difficult questions last week, but guess what? It doesn't get any easier.
Oh, no.
I know. This is your second week on the podcast, so I decided to make the questions even more inane and ridiculous. So if you're ready, I have two questions for you to answer so that they can get to know you even better than they got to know you last week. So,
let's do it.
First question, which to you is the most interesting religion in A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones? Because there are a lot out there, right? I mean, we've got the Old Gods, we've got the Seven, we've got R'hllor, so which one to you is the most interesting? Because I already mentioned mine earlier.
Yes, you have answered this question yourself, as you tend to do.
Yes.
Interesting is an interesting word because if it means which one I had the most fun reading about and watching on the screen, it's probably R'hllor, Melisandre.
Beric Dondarrion and Thoros of Myr.
Yes,
R'hllor.
because with all the Beric Dondarrion and the in the book the glamour and the power that Melisandre has. But also the fact that she's also doing like smoke and mirrors, like a lot of it is just sort of like parlor tricks.
Yes.
But then there is real power behind it. I like trying to draw that line between what she is doing just as a performer and then her genuine power.
Yeah.
I think is really interesting, and the fact that the fact that she shadow assassinated Renly Baratheon is an indication of what kind of power she has. But
it's honestly, R'hllor and the many-faced god of the Faceless Men are the only sort of gods we've seen demonstrate any kind of power.
Yes.
And I think that that's really interesting. I also like R'hllor. R'hllor's probably my second favorite. And, we've seen it. We've seen her. She killed Renly Baratheon. She birthed a shadow demon. She glamours Mance Rayder in the books. Makoro, is that his name in the books? The Red Priest over across in Volantis? Is it Volantis? He obviously has power as well. That's also in the books. So we've definitely seen the demonstration of the Red God's power, and I think that that's really interesting. So, interesting. You nailed it.
Thank you so much. I passed the test. That's part one of the test.
One of the tests. Secondly, this is just a fun one. If you had a direwolf, what would its name be? I know. It's straightforward. I mean, it's simple. I know we talked about it one time long ago.
Well, I would name my direwolf Justice not because it's the name of Anders.
I was about
to Dragon Age. Not because I hate Anders, by the way. And I hate him even more for stealing my direwolf name.
Although he probably didn't steal it.
Well, I'm accusing him of stealing it, and frankly, he's already been killed in my playthrough of Dragon Age. So
that is just shameful because he is very much alive in mine.
Well, unacceptable. You let him off the hook. This is a real that's a real Daenerys-style decision where you have to decide whether to part.
No, it's not. Okay, she killed the slave, man.
No, that's what I mean, though, is that it's a similar situation in which she was put in. I chose the Daenerys answer. You chose the opposite.
I chose the Barristan Selmy answer.
Yes, right.
Ooh, that silence. That silence.
That's tough. I mean, that's true. I'd never want to be on the opposite side.
You don't. Okay, anyway, enough of Dragon Age. We don't need to talk about that. So your direwolf would be named Justice.
Yes.
It's a strong name. I like it.
Thank you.
Mine would be Stranger. Another hearkening to the Faceless Men, as their many-faced god is one of the strangers of the seven. The seven gods of King's Landing and all that Westeros area have the Stranger as the crazy god. I lost my train of thought. Because I got sidetracked by my cat. Anyway, I was like, what are you doing?
Like Anders' cat.
Yes.
Yeah, well, the Stranger is obviously fascinating and relevant to this episode because this was the introduction of the House of Black and White.
It is, which, that's a perfect delivery, Kyle, because now it's time to delve right into the House of Black and White as an episode, and I would argue that it was even stronger than its predecessor.
I think so, too.
I absolutely think so. There was a little more fighting. Honestly, anything with the House of Black and White is going to get me way more interested because it's my favorite thing in the books. So what happened? I took notes, and this time we'll even go almost in order of the way the episode played out.
Well, hold on. I want to talk about that. We're talking about big picture of the episode because I think what made this episode so effective and so it moved so fast, and Game of Thrones typically moves pretty fast, but I thought this one was just a murderer's row of fun scenes. And it was the way that the scenes transitioned into one another.
Yes.
That there was someone would mention something.
And then it would happen in the next scene.
And then we would go to them.
It was great.
For the first 40 minutes of this episode, I felt like the transitions between scenes were just flawless. Like, we would just go from one to the next to the next. Like Tyrion saying, Cersei can't kill all the dwarves.
And then bam, the head on the head on the table.
Dwarf head on the table.
Yep, I absolutely agree. And I think that's one of the things that made this episode go so well is because it didn't feel like you weren't jarred from character to character. It all sort of made sense the way in which it flowed. And I think that it's just gotten better. There were certain times watching episodes, that it would sort of be like, oh, we're where Jon is, and then we move over to Dany, and it doesn't make any sense, and you're sort of like, wait, oh, okay, here I am, now I'm in, like, Meereen, and I have to think about Meereen when I was just at the Night's Watch. But in this episode, they really sort of, it all fit together, and I agree that the big picture, it worked really well. And that's maybe why we like that episode so much.
Yes, and especially the transition into Dorne, where that's a whole new setting that we've barely seen on the show, but it was prefaced with this conversation between Cersei and Jaime, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but the way that was introduced so that we know it's Dorne and so we know it's coming was really effective.
I agree. So now let's go microscopic and take on what happened to each character. So we finally got to see Braavos, which is so exciting. And to me, it was everything I've ever imagined. Reading the books, it looked exactly how I thought it would. Even the Bronze Titan. It all looked how I thought it would. It looked sort of like Venice, interestingly enough, I don't know where they filmed it. If it is in Venice, then my bad. I guess I didn't look that up. But it really looked like Venice. So Arya gets there, and she gets to the House of Black and White. And she is greeted by the kindly man, aka my 8th favorite character in all of Game of Thrones. And then she is promptly turned away as well, although his argument can't really be one-upped, right? She says that she has nowhere to go, and he replies, you have everywhere else to go.
Yes. And
I loved that line. Like, from that moment, I was hooked. I was just, oh my god, they've done exactly what I wanted them to do with the House of Black and White. It's very unclear, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and that's what I love about that faction. And it's a good way of thinking about life that you have everywhere else to go, right? One door closes, two more open, except in Arya's case, because she sticks around, patiently waiting for him to open the door.
Sits on the steps.
Yep, saying the chant of the names, Cersei, the Mountain, Meryn Trant. I'm probably getting it wrong. There's 4 of them. Cersei,
the Mountain,
Meryn Trant. There's one more. Walder Frey. Cersei, Walder Frey, the Mountain, Meryn Trant. I think that's the right order. Anyway, so she waits for him to open the door, only he doesn't. And finally, after sitting out in the rain in the sun and getting tan, she gives up, throwing the coin that Jaqen H'ghar gave her into the water and walking away. I thought this was a perfect introduction to the House of Black and White, and it also says a lot about Arya's character, that she knows when to end it. She saw that they were not going to let her in, and she was like, okay. I'm good. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna find my own way in Braavos.
Yeah.
And I really like that.
Well, there was that scene of her. The next time we see her, she's very deftly cutting the head off a pigeon.
Yes, finding her own way.
Yeah, exactly. But that was it. Like that little scene tells us what she was doing in the interim.
Yes.
Which is just surviving by killing pigeons in the streets of Braavos.
Right, and I think that once again, it says a lot about her character, that she just wants to survive. She doesn't quite know where she's going. That didn't work, so on to the next thing. Yes. And we'll come back to her because, like I said, that whole thing is so important to me that I want to give it real time. So I have to say, we moved on to Brienne, and I have to say, like, the entirety of Brienne's storyline is just a lot of cruel irony. Right? Yeah. I mean, she swore to Catelyn Stark that she would protect her daughters, but when Brienne finds both of them, they both turn her down. I mean, that is so harsh. That is like, oh, okay. Anyway, Kyle, those whole couple of scenes are totally a departure from the books. Brienne's story is totally different in the books. I mean, I guess she's only in book 4. Or is she? Yeah, she's only in book 4. And it's very different. So how do you feel about it?
She doesn't show up in the books when Renly's killed?
No, she does, but that's where book 4 is where she ends. Like, that's her last book that she's in.
Yeah, yes, right.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, she has a very different, sorry, I have to cause a pause. I'm hearing myself from your...
So how do you feel about that departure from the books?
Well, Brienne's departure is tied hand in hand with Sansa's departure from the books.
Yes.
Right? In the books, Sansa, of course, is in the Eyrie the entire time. Once she gets there, she never leaves.
Right.
And so for her to be gone so quickly, it's I don't know if this is part of the future of the books. I don't know if this is going to happen or if we are just totally on our own. Right. I have no sense of where this is going. It was certainly a coincidence for Brienne to run into Sansa.
Seriously.
To be eating in the same place as her. But at the same time, it's one of those coincidences where I can accept it.
I can
that
too.
They would show up at the same inn at the same time because it's fun.
Sort of like Deus Ex Machina a little bit. But at the same time, Catelyn and Tyrion showed up at the same inn. Maybe it's a Stark thing.
Yeah, well,
it's just a Stark thing.
Are they on the King's Road? Is that where they are now?
I don't even know. I have no idea where they are because we don't have any idea where Peter is taking Sansa, so we don't know where they're headed. We don't know where Brienne is. She says she sees them go down the East Road, I believe. That's what she says, and then they choose to follow. But I think we're totally on our own with this. They've chosen this path for Sansa. We don't know where she's headed. They've chosen this path for Brienne. Honestly, I can't even begin to understand why Sansa would choose Icky Peter over the goddess that is Brienne of Tarth. Sansa is going to need protection, and even though Peter can wield a knife, I guess, she's going to need a champion. Her version of the Hound, right? And who is better, better to be that than the woman who defeated the Hound in the first place?
Yeah, but Peter immediately goes about discrediting her.
Right.
I mean, I would imagine most of the realm still thinks she killed Renly Baratheon.
Yeah. And
so her reputation precedes her. And then she was, by her own admission, in charge of protecting Catelyn Stark when Catelyn was murdered.
Yep. No, I can see Sansa's, I can see why Sansa chose to turn her away. However, because I don't know where Sansa is going, I don't know that, I'm just like, would she be better off saying yes? Well, and,
I think the conversation that Brienne and Podrick had when Pod was basically saying, are we done here?
Right, and she's like, no.
Well, she asked him, "Do you think she's safe with Littlefinger?" And
Yep.
Todd had to admit, "No, she isn't."
Because no one is safe with Littlefinger.
Yeah, I think that's foreshadowing. I think he has bad intentions for her.
I think he does too.
I don't think he's going to keep her safe. I think he is either going to attempt to marry her himself, or he's going to marry her off in a way that's against her will to increase his own power.
Well, it said that his marriage proposal was accepted. He said that in the episode, and I have no idea who he proposed to.
Maybe it wasn't his marriage proposal.
But his arrangement?
Uh-huh, right.
And she doesn't know.
That's what I would think.
Oh, that's terrifying.
I bet he married her off to someone. I mean, I have a whole theory about this, but it gets into book spoiler territory, so I won't unveil it. But
that we can do that later on, I guess.
Okay,
I think, jumping back on Brienne just a little bit, because I do enjoy her so much, the fact that she's sort of continuing on this Stark mission, right? I mean, she's going to follow Sansa. There's no question. She's going to keep an eye on her. She lost Arya. So the least she can do is follow Sansa. It sort of leaves the door open, maybe this is just, empty wishes. But maybe it leaves the door open for Lady Stoneheart. And if you listeners don't know who Lady Stoneheart is, that's fine, don't look it up. But I'm just saying, perhaps this character that no one knows could show up and do her bidding. I don't know.
Yeah. Perhaps. It's interesting to see if the show wants to go that direction or not.
We should have.
I think the show's been pretty cagey about engaging in that kind of, with that kind of material, which is very different than the rest of the show. So,
Very much so.
Yeah.
Without giving anything away, obviously.
Yes, I'll get around it.
A girl can dream, obviously, of that, and so can you, Kyle. So, who knows? Who knows if it'll happen? It's just it's an interesting thought, I suppose, to see, because so far, Brienne she's staying with the Starks. She's not doing her own thing. She is so tied to those vows that she made Catelyn that she can't see past it. So, who knows? Maybe it's going to come around. That's all I'm saying. So,
it
could. Who knows? Okay, so in King's Landing, now we're getting there. Cersei has received a gift from Dorne. It sounds like it sounds like I'm setting up some sort of like a D&D game.
You sound like you're Chris Harrison reading The Bachelor interstitials. Where he John's on a date with Caitlyn.
Oh,
like that kind of thing.
Yes, he is. Anyway, the gift is a necklace that she gave to Marcella, of which there are only 2 of in the entire world. Both she and Jaime see it as a threat, right? And after arguing that he should consider the Baratheon children, the departed Joffrey, Marcella, and Tommen as his children, he decides that he's going to be a good father for once and go to Dorne to save his daughter.
Well, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Who sent the necklace?
Dorne.
Who?
Oh, who? I bet it... Oh, God. Probably... You stumped me. There are a few possibilities, obviously.
I don't think it was Doran.
You don't think it was Doran?
Doran, yeah. I don't think it was Doran.
Oh, God, no. I don't think it was Doran at all.
Yeah, that's not his move.
It could have been Ilaria.
I would think it would be Ilaria.
Because we cut right to her, pretty much. When did she show up? She shows up after Bronn. But still, we cut to her. We're in King's Landing, and then we're in Dorne, and we see her first. So It's very much a possibility that she did, because she wants to wage a war on the Lannisters for killing Oberyn and Martell. So I would argue that it's her and maybe the Sand Snakes together doing it. But who knows? I don't know.
We're still yet to meet the other Sand Snakes.
Yeah, I think we're going to do that next episode, hopefully.
I would suspect.
Yes. So let me see where I left off. Okay, yeah, so Jaime decides to man up and be a dad, or a father to his children, which is sort of a huge thing, because he's always just not. He doesn't see them as his children, really. He doesn't see them as his own kin, and I think it's a really interesting turn for him. What do you think about that?
I wonder what his motivation is, because my sense from the scene is that he's not doing this for Cersei's behalf. He's doing this because he wants to get out of King's Landing.
Yeah.
I feel like he seized on this as a convenient opportunity to go on an adventure and to be a knight again.
Interesting. So it's for his own Maybe for his own satisfaction on some level?
Yeah, well, I think given that conversation that Cersei had, I think Jaime has a sense of how badly this is going to go.
Yeah. With
Cersei in charge. That he knows, that things won't go well and that Cersei's surrounding herself with lick spittles, as the book would say. And that he sees this as a chance to have a quest and to be gone for a while and to do something that's noble.
Yeah, he gets to play the hero again.
Yeah, he gets to be a hero again. And it's been a while since he's that, and he definitely doesn't want to be pulled into the politics of this situation.
Right.
And he knows how tenuous the Lannisters' position is and how ill-equipped Cersei is to run a kingdom.
And he doesn't want to watch it fall.
Yeah, right. He's getting out.
He's willing to do it from afar, and he'll step back in if his sister needs him because he does love her. I mean, there's no denying that he loves Cersei. Right. But I agree. I think that he's stepping away for his own behalf. Maybe a little bit of it is fatherly instinct, but most of it is probably selfish, and he wants to get out. He doesn't do it alone, though, does he?
Yeah.
No. So Cersei scoffs at him when he says that he's going to go to Dorne and save their daughter. She's like, a one-handed man can't do anything. And he's like, well, I'm not going to be alone. Yeah. And then I knew immediately when he said that. I was like, well, I know who he's going to choose. Mm-hmm. Bronn the Sellsword.
Bronn!
Who I saw in the season 5 trailer. I actually yelped because I didn't think they would bring him back. He doesn't really show up again in the books after he says goodbye to Tyrion. And so for me to see him again, just even in the trailer, was just so good. So good, because Bronn is so good.
Well, this is part of what the TV show does so well, which is combine the stories of side characters into one, and to make them a more interesting character. And so when Jaime was being trained to use his sword with his left hand in the books, it's Ilyn Payne.
Ilyn Payne, yeah.
Who teaches him. But Ilyn Payne is a boring character.
And,
he's a one-note
he beheaded Ned Stark, so no one really wants to read about Ilyn Payne.
And he can't speak, and he's
a good trainer, though.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's just a functional person in this world.
Yes.
But there's nothing there to really work with. Whereas Bronn is this fascinating character that we've been on adventures with, who has a point of view that's pretty unique to the world.
Yep.
And so in the show, Bronn is the one who trains Jaime, thus establishing a relationship between those two.
So there was no doubt. Right. There was no doubt that it was going to be Bronn that goes with him on this mission. It's the only choice.
Yeah. One more thing I'm wondering about the mission.
Yes.
I wonder if Jaime is playing Cersei false, and if his mission isn't what he says it is.
You mean he might not go to Dorne?
No, he might not be. I think he's going to Dorne. He might not be going to rescue Myrcella. He might be going for some other reason. I'm just throwing that out there.
It's a red herring. Like him going to see Myrcella is a red herring, and he's in fact going to
maybe to negotiate with Dorne because he knows that they're in trouble.
And Duran Martell isn't an inherently evil character, right? He has good in him. He even argues that he's not going to kill a little girl. So he can be dealt with and talked to. So it could be that.
My interpretation of this theory, and I don't even know if I believe this, it's just a thought that occurred to me while watching this for the second or third time, is that maybe Jaime, when Cersei was bellowing about how she was going to sack Dorne and burn the city to the ground and blah, 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 and basically having a panic attack, Jaime realized that if Cersei is the one who's going to negotiate Myrcella's return,
she's not going to come back.
Cersei's going to send the army.
Yeah.
And that would be...
And it would end in bloodshed.
Yeah.
For both parties. Myrcella would be killed.
Yeah, well, and it would leave King's Landing unprotected. I mean, the Lannisters don't... Highgarden wouldn't help them. Like, it would be a political disaster.
Yep.
And so maybe Jaime realized that is sort of appointing himself a diplomat and using Bronn just sort of as his, in case he runs into trouble on the road. But maybe he's going to go there and negotiate Myrcella's return, as opposed to what he said to Cersei, which is kidnap Myrcella.
Right.
Basically, which is what she thinks he's going to do.
And what is he going to say? Myrcella, I'm the King's Guard, you have to come with me? Like, he can't play the father card. So what is he really doesn't have that much strength. I mean, Myrcella's happy in Dorne. You see
Right.
little little pictures of her in Dorne with the young prince whose name I can't remember, and there she seems happy, like she doesn't want to leave somehow, right? And so, what does Jaime have to offer, even if he does go?
She's also in imminent danger, and she doesn't realize it.
Right.
Because the Sand Snakes all want her. The entire population, other than Doran, want her dead.
Yes. Well, Areo Hota will not let her be hurt. Please.
Sure.
Come on.
But the Sand Snakes are very sneaky and very good with weapons.
And so apparently is Alaria Sand.
Yes.
Yep.
Right.
All I will say about this whole Bronn and Jaime team up is I am so excited.
Me too.
About it. Because Bronn and Jaime are both on my top 25 list, I believe. So, and to have seen this relationship grow through the seasons, and like I said, there was really no other choice than to put these two characters together. I wish George R. R. Martin had seen it so we could have read it. But then again, I think that Jerome Flynn brings something to Bronn that he didn't have in the books.
No, that's not a character that's particularly interesting in the books.
No.
He's a functional character. And the books also introduces this whole other world with,
completely different.
Yeah,
completely different characters.
Completely different cast of characters. And so I feel like, again, the show makes very smart decisions when to roll up plot lines into one another. I
agree. Keeps it
without having to introduce a million characters.
Yes. I just, before we move on to Dorne, actually, I just want to give a quick shout out to Lena Headey, who just floors me every time she acts. Like, that scene when she's talking about burning Dorne and her children, she just, oh my god, I just felt it. Like, I'm just like, that inherent need she feels to protect her children after, hearing what Maggie the Frog had to say. Like, you can see it through Lena's acting, and I was floored. So I just want to say that really quickly.
She's great.
Because I love her. And I love Cersei. And I know Cersei gets a lot of hate, but I don't understand it because she's an incredible female lady. That's redundant, but still. Okay, so we're going to move on to Dorne. And I have to say, I have been looking forward to Dorne and Braavos almost equally, Braavos a little more. But Dorne I love because I love Oberyn Martell. He's one of the most interesting characters in Westeros. And so is Doran Martell. And so to finally see Doran and to see Dorne on screen just really once again brought that love back. So like I said earlier, the first character we see in Dorne is Oberyn Martell's paramour, Alaria Sand. And she's wanting revenge for his gruesome death. She goes to speak with Doran Martell, who is the head of the house and Lord of Sunspear, but he won't allow Alaria to do anything nasty, especially to young girls like Myrcella. She makes a threat on his life and leaves, brushing past Areo Hota, who is another one of my... I just love big, burly, guard guys. Yes. I don't know what it is. I don't know. What did you think? It's a very, very different... It's different than what happens in the books. But it's a common thread I've noticed, especially in this episode. When we first see Dorne, instead of meeting the Sand Snakes or Arianne Martell, who I don't think is going to be a part of this season. They didn't announce casting, which is heartbreaking because she's awesome. She's so badass. The audience gets to see Alaria Sand, who is a character that we all know. So now we get to see this new part of the world through the eyes of someone familiar. Instead of seeing a new world, new people, getting really confused, being like, I don't know who that is, I don't know who that is, that blonde girl must be Myrcella. That's all I got. So I think that's the smartest way the showrunners could have done it. For us as book readers, I think it would have been nice to see characters that we know, that the rest of the world doesn't know, but seeing Alaria and Dorne definitely made the transition easier.
Yeah, well, it also creates a narrative, which is that she was there when Oberyn was killed, and has an anger based on that. I
would have an anger too, after seeing that. I see her point.
But there's a neatness to that narrative, and the way the show, because Game of Thrones, especially for non-book readers, is a very difficult show to follow anyway, because there are so many characters. And I just feel like that Arianne stuff comes out of nowhere. That's just an entire new world that's introduced, basically.
It's tough to read in the books. I definitely felt myself falling asleep during some of Arianne's chapters.
Yeah, well,
that doesn't go I'm not saying that she's not a great character, because she is. She's awesome, like, as a female character. She's so strong and so great to read. But it was definitely difficult, even in book 4, to read that.
Well, especially the first time when you don't know what's happening.
Yes.
It's a season 2 of The Wire effect, where it gets better in retrospect, because you understand, but it's so jarring initially, and the book does that regularly, and the show tends to avoid that. Mm-hmm. The show tends to try to have a little more narrative flow than the books. I think part of the thing with the books is that it's just this giant world, and we can have pages and pages of exposition about each scene and all that, and the show has to introduce Dorne in about 4 minutes of total screen time.
Right.
And so seeing, recognizing Ilaria Sand and understanding who she is and her relation to Oberyn, it immediately gives us a sense of what this conflict is. And, and we learn, we scratch the surface of what Doran's position is, which is he recognizes, like, this was a trial by combat that Oberyn signed up for willingly.
He died, and it's not, like, one of them had to die, right? It's
not murder.
It's not murder. He signed up willingly. He said, Tyrion, I'm going to be the man that fights for you.
Yes.
Like, he was not... In fact, he poisoned his spear, so technically he cheated, right? Yes. It's like Ilaria doesn't understand, and that's why I love Doran so much, is because he's, like I said, he's not inherently evil. He's very neutral. Yes, he's upset that his brother was murdered. Of course he is. But he recognizes that it was a legitimate death.
Well, he's one of the few characters, and I would classify Tyrion and Varys as these two as well, who can see the entire chessboard.
Yes.
And who are acting in a way, in a politically savvy way. And he understands that, like, Doran, I don't think is driven so much by, like, a sense of, like, stark, like, honor that he needs to recognize that this killing was legitimate. It's more that it's not politically smart to wage a war over, with Westeros, with basically the rest of Westeros, the Highgarden and all that, all the allies, over what they will view as a legally sanctioned murder, and therefore there won't be any sympathy to Dorne.
The Dornish will run up to King's Landing and just bounce off.
Yeah, right.
Because they're just going to be like, what are you doing?
The show hasn't even gotten into this, but I don't think it's really a spoiler to say that Dorne is not in a militarily strong position.
Not at all.
It's supposed to be. It's thought of as being stronger than it is,
mm-hmm.
and so Doran, of course, knows that and knows that they'd be crushed by the combined forces of
the Tyrells and the Lannisters.
Yeah, the Tyrells and the Lannisters. So he's one of those thinkers, and Varys recognizes this in Tyrion, as someone who can make choices that are practical in the big picture sense.
And that's why he is the head of the house and the lord of, the city in Dorne. Like, it's only because of that reason. Well, also, obviously, because he was born into it. But why he stayed as the head of the house is because he can see the entire chessboard.
Yes.
So...
Exactly.
I think it was a great introduction to Dorne. It was a great introduction to Doran's character as well. He definitely plays a huge role later on, and I hope we'll get to see the Sand Snakes next week. I'm sure we're going to see more of Ilaria Sand as well, because she sort of seems to be the main sort of antagonist for Doran in this part of the show. So now we'll move on even more, and I'm going to throw it to you, Kyle, because you're now the resident Daenerys expert. As you so succinctly put it, you are embedded in Meereen.
Yes, I'm reporting live from the ground in Meereen, and let me tell you, things here are a little wild.
Oh dear. Hopefully you can get yourself to safety.
Yeah, so this episode starts with Meereen, with Daario and Grey Worm going to investigate a lead that Dario's men have found. And what we are led to believe from their conversation is that the Unsullied are very bad at this. The Unsullied are amazing fighters, the best fighters in all the realm, but not good detectives.
They think with their muscles. They see something and they kill it. They don't... Yeah, exactly. They're not sellswords.
They don't listen for rumors. They don't blend in.
Right.
They don't do anything that's necessary to suss out people who are trying to hide from them. Luckily, Dario's second sons do all those things and have found a lead on one of the Sons of the Harpy, They get to the house, and Grey Worm takes one look, assesses it as empty, and is ready to leave. Dario, of course, is not convinced. Stabs his dagger through the wall right into the leg of the sons of a son of the Harpy who is hiding. So the story of this episode, with regards to Marine, is what to do with this murderer and insurgent against Dany. And Barristan the Bold makes a compelling case that wins the day, which is that Dany's forefathers, like the Mad King, for example,
her father,
lost their lives and their realm for making decisions like executing people without a trial.
Yes.
Executing even when they're obviously guilty. And Barristan basically sways Dany to give this man a trial.
Well, he wants her to be a just ruler.
Yes.
Right? He doesn't want her to turn into her father. He was there when he was Kingsguard, right? When Aerys was just destroying people because he felt like it. Yes. Right, and so he's basically begging. I mean, obviously we know Barristan doesn't beg. No. But basically he is begging her, or asking her, will you become your father? Or will you become the ruler that Marine needs?
Yes. Unfortunately, for both of them, they are thinking in the Westerosi way.
Yes.
In Marine, as vocalized by Mosador, the representative from the slaves who were freed, the concept of justice does not exist.
Nope.
There is your enemy and your friend, and you support your friend and you kill your enemy. And in this case, there's a very clear black and white divide between the Sons of the Harpy and and Dany's side, the slaves who were freed. And the slaves are very unhappy that Dany is not going to kill this guy immediately. So,
but she's even considering giving him a trial.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Mosador takes it. I hope I'm saying his name right. Takes it upon himself to kill the man in captivity and hang his body out in the Harpy garb for all to see, with a message to kill the masters. This does not go over well with Dany.
No.
Who understands what he did, and he presents it as he believes that he believes that he understands her position, which is that she cannot kill this man because she wants to maintain the illusion of justice.
Right, but he can.
He can, and she could give him like a pardon without compromising herself politically.
Because she is the mother.
Yes, unfortunately, we were talking about Stark-like honor before. Dany has, inspired by Barristan the Bold, has that streak in her, which is that even though it is not politically smart to punish Mosador, she feels honor-bound to do so, and believes that that's the kind of ruler she wants to be. That's a sort of idealism that is part of Dany's character coming through. She does not want to be the kind of ruler where prisoners are executed before they stand trial. The problem is the Myronese citizens do not understand that kind of subtlety. And so when Dany has Mosador executed publicly and for all the city to see, all of her freed slaves turn on her and hiss at her in a very unnerving way.
That was so unnerving. Oh,
very unnerving.
I sort of just like sat up and was like, what is going on? Like, who would have thought? It's such a turn.
It's a turn, and she doesn't score any points with the masters either.
Nope.
Because they don't care.
Right.
They're not going to view. I mean, their guy was still killed and hung out in the streets.
Right.
Like, just because you executed the person who did this isn't going to change anything with them. And so Dany essentially alienates her friends without gaining any points with her enemies. And it all leads to a riot in which Dany herself has to be protected from rocks being thrown. And she basically has to retreat to the temple and no longer has any allies within the city. And her only ally, as it turns out, is Drogon.
He shows up once again.
He shows up on top of the temple. Dany almost touches his nose. He flies away beforehand. But he's clearly not as mad at her as the other dragons are.
Clearly. And honestly, I think it's what we as an audience needed to see. Yeah. At this point, we are sort of questioning Dany's morals as a ruler and as a human being, right? We understand why she killed Mosador,
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, okay, Danny, really, you should have thought this through a little bit more, right?
Well, the problem with Danny is the same problem with Ned Stark,
Mm-hmm.
which is that she feels bound by a certain idealism and will not break her own. And Danny's actually at times almost done this. I think at one point Jorah talks her out of executing all the Masters.
Yes.
But
she has that Mad King streak in her.
She does, and she's also not a very good ruler, which I think is something that the TV show never outright says.
But the books do.
The book does, and it's more clear in the books. But it's also, I think, if you think about her track record, it's clear in the TV show too. Mm-hmm. Is that she's not very good at this. She's trying to be good, and she tries to be competent, and she's clearly not cruel in the way that her brother was, that Viserys was, or that the Mad King was. But she's also very young and very inexperienced, and doesn't have any political savvy at all.
Yep.
And which I think is the TV show's subtle way of introducing the need for Tyrion. Because Tyrion is the perfect complement to her.
He's
Tyrion
just got to get there.
Yeah, he doesn't have any of Dany's royal aura. You know, he doesn't have any of her political
he knows what he is.
He knows what he is. He doesn't have dragons. He doesn't have. Dany has a certain right to rule that is just apparent when you look at her, but she doesn't have any of the savvy to actually rule effectively. Tyrion has all of the savvy to rule effectively, and none of the sort of commanding presence that's required to rule.
It's a perfect match, honestly. He's just got to get there.
Yes, right. And so we're gonna, I assume, go on this very long journey with Tyrion that heads through Volantis, excitingly.
I know.
But I for the first time understanding Dany's narrative arc better, because she's been stuck in Meereen for so long,
and she's been trying to fix Meereen, but to no avail,
and making things worse.
Right.
But that's why Tyrion's needed, and so I'm starting to get it now. I get where we're heading with Dany, which is she's going to screw up Meereen until Tyrion arrives, and then hopefully accepts him and becomes a better ruler.
That's the question. Presence. That's the question. Yeah. You know, because in the books, they don't meet.
No.
It's a very different, but then again, like we said, it's a very different storyline for Tyrion. Dany's is pretty much the same. A few things here and there are different. Drogon showing up is definitely... He does not show up till the very, very end.
By the way, in that scene when Drogon shows up at the end, no spoilers, Tyrion is present at that scene. If you'll remember, Tyrion had performed earlier in the program.
Right.
And so he does... Again, even though the specifics change, his journey in the books is to get to Dany.
Right.
It's just under completely different circumstances.
Yes.
But it's the same journey. It's just a different way of going about it.
No, absolutely. And now we can sort of switch gears to Tyrion and Varys, who have it's only one scene that they have in this episode, like last week's. But once again, the writing of these two characters is just so top notch. Honestly, they've gotten these two characters down to a T. And so we don't need a hugely long scene that explains what their inner thoughts and everything that they're going through. No, we need a quick scene. We just need to see them. We need to get our fix, and then we're good.
Yeah, and I think the scene in this episode was also to juxtapose them and their talk about Tyrion being an effective ruler. You know, Varys mentions his time as Hand of the King. And it's to establish his credentials.
Absolutely.
For what I was just talking about.
They really are. They're very subtly building up this whole that Dany needs Tyrion more than ever, more than anything. She needs Tyrion at her side.
She doesn't even realize it.
Nope.
But she needs.
She won't realize it for a long time, because when he shows up, all she's gonna think that Mad King thought. Right, that's a Lannister.
Right.
They killed my family. Right. That's all she's gonna think of, and so it's going to take her a bit of time to warm up to Tyrion, if it ever happens, which I really hope it does. What was I going to say? Oh, one thing I realized as I was writing an article for TV Binges, which we can shamelessly plug now, is that Varys is was the Master of Whispers, right? And one of his many spies was Jorah. So the question now is, do you think that Jorah is going to make a reappearance in the show? He was brutally just dismissed by Dany in season 4. Yeah. And now he's sort of wandering aimlessly. We're not really sure where Jorah is, but given the fact that he knows Varys, who knows? There could be some sort of convergence there with those 3 characters.
I think he absolutely is.
Yeah.
I think when you brought up this theory, I was on board immediately.
Good. I'm glad because I love Jorah.
Yes, because the last we saw of Jorah, he was just being dismissed.
Yep.
He was never killed. We haven't seen him since.
He needs a purpose because they can't just write off that character.
Well, and right now they're on. Where did they land in Essos? Tyrion and Varys.
They're still on the road.
But they're on the road to Volantis from somewhere. But either way,
from Pentos.
From Pentos, right, from a port. It's probably likely that Jorah is on his way back from Marine through Volantis, probably heading to Pentos to, because that's like a coastal city.
Right.
Who knows? He got his pardon.
He did.
That's how they found out that he was spying on Dany.
It's because he got the pardon, right? Because he got the pardon.
So his only move now is to take a boat back to Westeros.
The question is, does he want to? He might find himself in Volantis drinking himself into a stupor because here's this woman that he supported 100% and then he got promptly thrown out on his ass. So he could be drinking, and somehow in a strange Deus Ex Machina thing again, Tyrion wants a drink, so he goes into a tavern, and boom, there it is.
But what I'm saying is that he has reason to be heading back the same way that Tyrion and Varys are arriving.
Right.
And so their paths would naturally cross at some point.
Maybe.
Whether he's stalled out...
Volantis is a big city, Kyle.
Well, whether he stalled out in Volantis or they might meet on the road. They could
meet on the road, yeah.
Yeah, but they're on the same path, basically.
What we're saying is that Jorah's going to show up at some point.
Jorah's going to show up.
And I think then he's either going to sort of be the way that sways Dany in favor of Tyrion. He could be like, look, I stayed. Or he's like, I found this guy. He's a Lannister. You probably want to kill him. There's one of two ways it could go.
I suspect the arc of the season. And again, this is so different than the books. I don't feel like my book knowledge is spoiling anything because this could be totally wrong. What I'm proposing is different than what happens in the books.
Yes.
So I don't think this is a spoiler. I think Dany's council is going to fall apart. Yeah. I think the city is going to fall apart.
Well, after what happened in this episode, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think Jorah is going to team up with Tyrion and Varys because, like you said, Varys has a relationship with Jorah.
Yes.
I think those 3 are going to team up and head to Dany, and things will be going so badly in Meereen that when they arrive, Dany will realize that this is exactly what she needs.
Yes, I'm hoping.
Yeah,
because that would not she would be sort of shutting down the heiress part of her, and that would be very interesting, and I hope so. I would love to see that happen. Like, I would give my left hand, just like Jaime, or was it his right hand?
It was his right hand.
His right hand.
Give your left.
I'd give my left because I'm right-handed. I'd rather not give my right hand.
Yes.
But I would love to see it happen. So fingers crossed it does, because that would. Because sometimes I got a little bored of Dany's storyline, but that would just, I would not. That's 3 of my favorite characters are in the same place with Dany. It's just it's great. It would be great. So
it would be awesome.
There's another, so we'll just move on because we're, still going through the episode.
Yep.
So there's after Tyrion and Varys have a chat, it's one of those great transitions into a Cersei scene where she and Qyburn, right? That's how you... Qyburn, who is a necromancer, are chatting. And it's revealed at a small council meeting that she has elevated him to the Master of Whispers, which was Varys' position.
And he was looking so creepy.
Creepy!
Standing in the shadows just leering.
I know! And one thing I'll say is that if Maester Pycelle doesn't like someone... there's got to be something wrong with them.
Yeah, that dude is shady.
He is so shady. That small council scene was great, though, because, honestly, Kevin Lannister stole the show.
Yes, Mace Tyrell is just a buffoon.
He had to be drunk.
Yeah, he's just a drunk, blustering buffoon.
He was slurring his words. He's like, I'm honored, your queen, your worship.
Cersei appeases him very easily by making him the Master of Coin.
And Kevin is just like, what the fuck? Like, are you really an idiot? Are you that idiotic? He did not. I loved it. I love him in the books as well, but this episode was great in this scene was great because he sort of just doesn't take any of Cersei's shit. He's like, yeah, you want to make me Master of War, but I want to see the king make me Master of War. From you, it's just words.
Well, he doesn't respect. He sees what Cersei's doing,
right?
In that she says all these things about, oh, the king is busy. The king is like 10 years old.
He's not making any decisions.
He likes putting his stamp on things.
He likes his cat.
Yeah, he likes his cat.
He likes the pretty girl that likes to kiss him.
Yes. So Kevin sees this for what it is, which is Cersei establishing herself as queen.
Right.
She's making herself the most powerful person in the realm. And Kevin, like Jaime, like Tyrion, knows that she is not qualified for that job.
Shit's gonna hit the fan.
Yeah, she should not be someone who's in charge of all this. And Kevin is the kind of person who should be in charge of all this. And
he's not an evil Lannister.
No, and he's someone who's level-headed, and even though he was in Tywin's shadow his whole life...
Now he's not.
Now he's not. And he's also, so by default, becomes the savviest Lannister.
Right.
And he should be the one who's running the realm. Cersei has no business running the realm. And,
well, she just wants revenge, and she just wants power. Right. She's not thinking about how she gets the power. She just wants to be on top, because no one can touch her there.
Yeah, but so part of that goal is surrounding herself with people who she can flatter into supporting her
and who can protect her when the time comes.
So she's maintained the relationship with the Tyrells by elevating Mace Tyrell, and she's and so she's just trying to basically pay off everyone around her into acknowledging her power.
Yep. And
Kevin's not having it.
Absolutely. Okay. We'll keep going. So then we jump up north, where we have a very sweet scene between Gilly, Shireen Baratheon, and Sam, where they discuss, where Shireen is teaching Gilly how to read, and then the talk turns to grayscale, which is what has attacked Shireen's face. And they talk about that for a little while, and then they are rudely interrupted by Selyse, who is like probably the scariest mom to ever mom.
Oh, I hate her.
She's so creepy. Like, even her cheekbones. I'm just like, oh, everything is creepy about her. And she essentially warns Shireen against spending time with wildlings. And I really hope that this scene especially outlines Shireen as a good character, and I really hope she's going to have a bigger part this season. We need more strong women, always. She's such a sweet young thing, right? She's trusting. She taught Davos how to read, so automatically that just puts her super high up on just anything for me. And I just really hope we're going to see more of her. Stannis is really hard. He's a hard guy. And Selyse is mean. So the fact that they have a daughter who is so sweet and kind, I really hope that she plays more of a role this season.
Me too. Haven't we had some indication that Melisandre might be planning to burn her? Isn't there that, in the background?
Yeah, but Melisandre just wants to burn people in general.
I feel like we might be, because she has king's blood, right? Because Stannis is the king. And so I feel like this might be one of those cruel Game of Thrones situations where they're setting up Selyse to be super likable. Shireen, sorry.
No, it's fine.
Mixed them up. Shireen to be super likable, and then they're just going to kill her.
The thing is, though, Stannis won't let that happen. If it's one thing established by his character in the season 2 was that he goes, Shireen is my daughter and you will not touch her. He says that to Selyse.
That's true.
And I don't think, as king, he has the highest power. Yes, he can be manipulated by Melisandre, but I don't think he could be manipulated enough to kill his daughter.
It's also, Stannis is planning to march.
Right.
He's not just planning to sit there. And
right.
So, Shireen's not going to march with him, obviously, and Melisandre might not march with him. And so,
oh God, you're right. I hope you're wrong. I do.
I hope I'm wrong too.
Because she's
really
so
like
sweet. She's so sweet, and I would not like to see her get killed. And she's a child.
Game of Thrones likes to make us miserable.
It really does. And so far, except for killing Mance, we haven't really been miserable. So continuing on the wall, the Night's Watch is having an election.
Yeah.
And it's a tough one because who really wants Alistair Thorne in charge? No one. No one wants Alistair Thorne in charge. Even Stannis doesn't want. Davos is like, yeah, he doesn't like you very much. You should be careful.
Alistair is so unpleasant that even Stannis, who has never said a polite thing in his life, is like, oh, that guy's unpleasant.
Exactly. So there's actually a little conversation between Stannis where he reams Jon out a bit for sparing Mance Rayder the pain of burning alive. He then tells Jon that as a king, quotes, obviously, he is willing to pardon Jon's bastard on making him a fully fledged Stark and, in turn, Lord of Winterfell. I know the actual term is legitimized, but I like using more colorful language.
Very good.
Of course, there's a catch. Jon will have to swear fealty to Stannis and help him take back the North. And if you know Jon Snow, this is something that he has wanted since he could speak. To be legitimized, to actually call himself Stark, I mean, that is huge. The problem is that he swore a vow to the Night's Watch, right? So he tells Sam the Slayer, which I think is a totally befitting name of that character because he actually does slay. And even though the Night's Watch makes fun of him, I'm like, you guys are just fueling his fire. Like, he killed a White Walker. That's more than you've ever done, Janos Slynt. So shut up.
Absolutely. Fueling the fire inside his very large belly.
Yes. So he tells Sam that he's going to refuse Stannis' deal, which is, I mean, I saw that coming. Jon takes his vows so seriously. I mean, even when he sleeps with Ygritte, he's like, I don't know. And then Sam's like, but you're good. You didn't actually break the vow, right? You didn't take a wife. You didn't bear children. Like, you're good. You're okay. And Jon's like, you're right. I'm good. I'm okay. Okay, my vows are still in. Like, I'm good. So, I think that says a lot about Jon's character, and it builds up for what happens next, because the election begins. So Kyle, I know your least favorite character is List. How did you feel about Janos Slynt's adoration of Alistair Thorne?
Oh, it was like Voldemort standing up to endorse. I'm trying to think of like Skeletor.
Oh my god,
That's
was good.
Like two villains just working together. And the Night's Watch seemingly powerless because the only person running against them, as it seems, is old. Dennis Mallister?
Yeah,
is the guy's name.
Dennis
who's Mallister. Just old and over the hill and
who's been in the Night's Watch for a long time. It's legitimate, but he's not gonna win.
He's not gonna win. Yeah, he's just there for show. And then Sam the Slayer stands up
and gives the best speech. He essentially douses Janos Slynt just in gasoline and then lights him on fire.
He gets up in front of a 1990s comedy special style brick wall.
Yep.
He Friars Club roasts Janos, drops the mic, picks the mic up again, and then endorses Jon in the most moving speech Sam has ever given. Seriously,
I think that took the cake for the best scene of this episode, because to see Sam sort of stand up and step up to the plate and do that is so good. I mean, we never doubted that Jon was the right man for the job, but Sam solidified that.
Yeah, it was a great moment.
So the election comes down to Jon, Alistair, and Dennis. Maester Aemon counts the tokens, and what do you know? It's a tie between Thorne and Jon. Or so we think. Because in yet another twist that I loved, Aemon selects Jon's token, and boom, Jon is the 998th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch.
What a great scene that was.
Seriously.
Maester Aemon, old blind Maester Aemon, the way that the camera panned down to the even vote tallies, and then the guy next to Aemon has to whisper in his ear.
It's a tie.
It's a tie. So Aemon's like, oh, I'll break the tie, and he pulls it out of his sleeve.
He's like, guys, it's not a tie. It was never a tie.
He has to feel which one is which, it's so slow. And it's so
But you know what he's gonna do.
Of course. But, I mean, that was just a great TV moment. That's
Agreed.
The kind of moment that doesn't exist in the book.
Right.
The book is much more, it's a much longer process. Sam is, campaigning to get Jon.
Gren and Pip and Dolores are all in there helping. And that's why I was so saddened by the two of their deaths, was I was like, wait, how are they gonna do it how are they gonna do the election without Gren and Pip? But damn.
Yeah.
They did it.
It was much more of a spur of the moment thing.
And I loved it. I loved that.
Maester Aemon is such a boss. I love that guy. He's the oldest man in Westeros.
Honestly, that scene elevated Sam to a whole new level, and it allowed Master Aemon to become the unsung hero. And so to me, that was a perfect scene, the best scene of this season so far. And now we get to see Jon in a position of power, and who knows if he's gonna do well? Who knows if he'll, fail? But he's there now. He's in it, right?
Yeah. He's now the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch.
And oh god, I love that. Reading that in the books when he got like elected, I was like, yes. I said, finally, Jon is in some kind of position of power. This is something that he's been it's been in place since the first book when Mormont picks him as the steward. It's been in place for this long, and finally 4 seasons later or whatever, we get it.
Yep.
And I'm so happy. So now we're getting to the end of the overview. Let's talk about Arya's final scene, because oh wow. Kyle, do you want to take us through it a little bit? Just so what happens?
So Arya's been beheading pigeons happily. Mm-hmm. She's confronted on the streets by 3 ne'er-do-wells who want to take her sword, Needle. And as they are going to descend upon her, the kindly man shows up. They flee. Arya follows him back to the House of Black and White, and he returns the coin to her that she had thrown into the ocean, and then reveals himself to be Jaqen H'ghar.
Oh, Jaqen H'ghar. Oh my god. I have to say, even though this is a huge departure from the books, I'm completely a fan of it. To see Jaqen H'ghar again is honestly something I didn't think we'd see for seasons, and it harkens back yet again to this whole notion of comfortability and convergence. Right here we have a character who is kind of a question mark, yet everyone liked him, right? We're not quite sure what he was doing in the Black Cells at King's Landing or why he was headed up to the Night's Watch, but it didn't matter because he's got magic in him. I mean, the man can change his face, and so to see him meet up once again with Arya, it just makes complete sense. The House of White and Black, the Faceless Men, the Many-Faced God, those are all really tough pills to swallow. A lot of it is hearsay, and because Arya goes through so many changes, it's tough to make out exactly what she's talking about in those chapters, especially in those books. So to see Jaqen, I think it's going to make it all easier to understand.
Well, yes, exactly, and again, it's just what they did with Dorne, which is when the show has to introduce a new setting, they need an in. Whereas the book just throws you into the deep end. You know, the book will happily introduce new settings, and you just have to swim. And in the show, Jaqen and Arya already have this previously established relationship.
Right.
And so for him to be her in explains a lot of the motivations of both of them. It gives us something to hang our hats on, even as we're embarking into this really unfamiliar setting. And it gives us some stakes right away. Like we don't have to learn this entire new cast of characters. We have these 2 characters who we know, and we know Arya a lot better than Jaqen, but we still know them and their interaction, and we know what he's capable of, and it gives us a sense of why Arya would be interested in this and why Jaqen is interested in Arya. And it just it answers a lot of the why.
Right.
In a way that the book takes, chapters upon chapters to reveal slowly, which is, of course, part of what's great about the books, but also why it would never work on a TV show.
Absolutely.
And so, this is, again, another really smart way to introduce a new scene with characters that we're familiar with.
Yep. And it's all good. It's just going to make that transition so much easier. Because, like I said, it's complicated. The House of Black and White, it doesn't make much sense. And so for them to have done that, I'm so ready to see Jaqen in the house of, I'm so ready to see it. Yes. I'm so excited. Okay, so that sort of concludes the overview. It took a while. We sort of touched down on a lot of things. So let's briefly go into Davos talk. I'm pretty sure he had a total of 2 lines in this episode. He really hasn't reached his full glory yet, and I know we're only 2 episodes in, but still, I would have expected him to do something, right? So far, I'm not really seeing any inkling of where his story is heading on the show. So what do you think will they go there? Do you think the Onion Knight will traverse the sea to Lord Wyman Manderley? Oh dear God, that rhymed. That actually rhymed.
Are you reciting a poem?
I am. I wrote a poem about my love for Davos.
Yes, I wouldn't put it past you.
I know.
Yes, I do. I don't know. I don't know if it will involve Lord Wyman Manderley. I don't know I would suspect it won't. I think Davos will cross the sea, but I think as is the show's way, it'll be tied into some other story that we've already established.
Do you think it's what they hearken to at the end in book 5 in his last chapter?
It very well could be.
Me too. I hope so.
My guess at what will happen with Davos, and as you've said, we haven't had any hint of what it actually is going to be. But my guess is Stannis is going to use him as an emissary or as a diplomat in some way, and send him away from the Wall and away from Stannis' army. And he's going to have a mission, a quest, and whatever that quest is. You and I are on board. I'm so ready. I'm so ready for him to have more than 2 lines. Yes. Okay, so now we're moving on to the fan theory of the week. And this is one I'm not quite sure I'm on board with, but it's an interesting one to sort of point out. And it sort of goes along with last week's. And it is, Tyrion is actually a Targaryen. Now, I know it seems a bit far-flung, but there's actually quite a bit of evidence that supports the claim. So, Kyle, feel free to jump in. I don't know how much you know about this one, but... Not at all. Well, in the show, we don't know much about Tyrion's mother, Joanna. In the books, there's a bit more to her. All you Game of Thrones watchers know that Tywin despised his son. But honestly, other than the fact that he's a dwarf and Joanna died during childbirth, there aren't strong reasonings. Tyrion is his youngest child, the last living remnant of his dead wife. So wouldn't Tywin have coddled the kid? Okay, no. Tywin is not a coddler at all, but the point still stands, right? So why then did Tywin hate Tyrion so vehemently? Well, many fans believe that instead of T plus J equals T, A plus T equals G, the A standing for the one and only Aerys Targaryen, also known as the Mad King. And you know what? It's actually not as crazy as it sounds. See, King Aerys had a thing for Joanna Lannister. It's outlined quite heavily in George R. R. Martin's newest book, The World of Ice and Fire, which is sort of an overview and history of Westeros. Essentially, at the wedding of Tywin and Joanna, Aerys was pretty upset that he couldn't bed her. Because the king a lot of times gets first bedding rights. And before you get all hot and bothered, know that that was a pretty traditional thing, right? But Aerys wouldn't let it go. It's then said that he took certain liberties as king with Joanna and either seduced her or forced himself on her. This relationship eventually led to Tyrion being born with the blood of the dragon inside him. It also explains why Tywin despises him so much, and his complaint that he can't prove Tyrion is actually his kid. And there's more. Tyrion's looks, his personality, all of those are more reminiscent of Targaryen than of Lannister. But the most important aspect of this theory is a prophecy given to Daenerys during her stint at the House of the Undying. The dragon has 3 heads. Well, we know Dany is unquestionably Targaryen, and Jon's lineage is yet to be discovered, but I'm pretty sure we all know who his mother really is, and his father. So that just leaves the 3rd head. Is it Tyrion? What do you guys think? Kyle, I mean... Look, if the show isn't going along with the Aegon Targaryen storyline, it's definitely possible that Tyrion really is the son of Aerys, but it's still a little far-fetched. Well, listen, I have no idea if it's true or not. It seems like, it's one of those fan theories that may or may not be true. As a veteran Mad Men watcher, I'm very familiar with fan theories that don't pay off. Yes, me too. But what if Varys knows that Tyrion is Targaryen, and the reason he's bringing him to Dany is actually to reunite them? Damn. Reunite. Brother and sister. I guess it would be half brother and half sister. Half brother and half sister. Yeah. Oh, God. I mean, it's got cred. The theory definitely has some credibility. I don't know. It seems a little crazy because to me Tyrion is such a Lannister. Yeah. Not that I want him to be. I mean, he hates, the only person he loves in his family is Jaime. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel, because I love him being a Lannister. I love seeing that there are good Lannisters out there, like Kevin and like Tyrion. But at the same time, I mean, it would mean that the Targaryen bloodline really hasn't died out at all. Yes. Right. So that's just a theory. I'd love to hear what you as listeners think. And now it's time for the final bit of the podcast, the A Song of Ice and Fire versus Game of Thrones showdown. And I've already mentioned this a little bit, but let's talk a little bit more about Jaqen H'ghar, or rather the fact that he's replaced one of both our all-time faves, the Kindly Man. Kyle, do you want to explain a little bit about who the Kindly Man is? Yeah, I mean, we did see him in this episode for a brief period before he took off his mask. Mm-hmm. But in the books, he is the essentially mentor to Arya at the House of Black and White. He is the person who He's a very mysterious character, as evidenced by the fact that we do not know his name, and he, judging by the way the House of Black and White operates, he probably does not have a name.
Right.
He's referred to the kindly man because that's what Arya calls him.
And it's because he has a kind face. That's really, and then she just, okay, right. Yeah, he's the kindly man.
And Jaqen called Jaqen.
Jaqen. I say Jaqen, I don't know.
I call him Jaqen Hagar, but he calls himself a man, and
right.
he calls Arya a girl. And
then he says, but we are no one. Right.
Yes.
Right, so the kindly man acts...
So yeah, he's basically...
Yeah, you got it.
Well, yeah, he's Arya's sort of scene partner in this book for her entire journey. That he's the one who gives her first mission. He's the one who trains her. He's the one who teaches her the ways of this very mysterious group of what are essentially assassins, but also with a very heavily religious component.
Faceless assassins.
Faceless assassins, but also it's not what Arya imagined it was.
Right.
In that it's not this like elite group of assassins for hire. It's a very different kind of vibe, very much more religious. And so he is her mentor and her teacher, the same way that Syrio Forel taught her how to sword fight. He's kind of her teacher in the ways of this new profession, this new life that she's leading.
Yep, absolutely. Like I said before, a lot of my adoration for the kindly man comes from loving the many-faced god so much. But given the fact that I also really enjoy Jaqen Hagar, I have to say that I'm understanding of this replacement. And who knows, honestly, this might not be the last time we see the kindly man. The faceless men tend to change their faces quite a bit, right? So I'm actually I'm on board with this. Cats don't fight. Come on now. I'm on board with this huge change. But I actually want to talk a little bit about the meaning behind Vala Doharis, right? Because it's something mentioned quite a bit so far, right? As Arya goes to the man on the Bravosi on the ship, she says Valar Morghulis, he's like Vala Doharis. She says it to the kindly man, and he says it back. And a lot of people enjoy saying Valar Morghulis, right? But not much thought is given to the response. A lot of people believe Vala Doharis actually means all men must serve. And I think it ties in perfectly to Jaqen's reappearance, as it is a faceless man tradition to say those words. Yes, all men must die, but all men must serve as well. They must live their lives in service of the many-faced god until the day that they are free, as in the day that they die. In other words, death is a gift for the service that they've given. Arya is about to go through so many trials and tribulations wherein her faith in whichever god she believes in will be tested, and I think it's honestly a really good theme for the season. We've got all these characters with revenge plots, but in order to get there, they have to stay true to their vows, right? Brienne needs to serve and protect the Stark girls. Cersei and Jaime need to keep their children safe. Jon now must serve the Night's Watch completely, and then, once they've fulfilled their vows, they'll be rewarded in death. I don't know. What do you think, Kyle?
No, I think that's a good observation. I think you summed it up.
Good. I'm glad. That's honestly, I love that, because not a lot of people say Vala Doharis, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the response to Valar Morghulis,
right?
That all men, which is kind of funny that if people only latch on to the first part of that, which is all men must die, which is a very cool thing to say. It's something that Arnold Schwarzenegger would say in a movie. All men must serve is a much less cool sentiment. So I understand why people latched on to the cooler one, but it's also very. It's a good clue into what the House of Black and White really is about. Yeah. Because Arya probably at this point, and the audience thinks it's just a guild of assassins. Mm-hmm. But it's the serve part is very important.
Yep, absolutely. Good. Well, I thought that I liked talking about it because, like we said, a lot of people pay attention to Valar Morghulis, but Vala Doharis is just equally as important. You can't have one without the other. All right, it's time for the beard rating. We've finally gotten there. So, Kyle, how do you rate the House of Black and White? I know we both enjoyed it, and it's better than its predecessor. So, what do you think?
I'd give it an 8.5, which in beard terms, trying to think, maybe like Dario's beard?
Ah, you and I are sort of on the same page.
Okay.
Because I said an 8.5 as well, but I said Ned Stark's level of beard, right?
There you go.
It had the sideburns, it had the mustache, it just needed to grow a little bit more.
Yes.
So, and now it's time to wrap. So, Kyle, let the people know how they can find you.
Well, they can find me on Twitter at Kyle Loves TV, all one word, and they can read my writing and your writing, Sophia,
yes.
at tvbinges.com. And I want to plug that we are hosting an upcoming binge here on Sunday, May 3rd. We're all going to be getting together and watching episodes of Lost.
It's going to be really great because Lost is another one of those shows that has a bunch of question marks.
Yes,
yes.
Those questions will be unanswered by the end of the binge.
They will be.
We're going to have fun asking
We are. And Kyle and I both write for that. I just wrote an article that got released today on this episode of Game of Thrones, actually, on 5 ways in which it differed from the books. And Kyle, anything else you want to say?
That was a great article, and everyone should read it.
Thank you very much. And you can follow the podcast at YouGotGot on Twitter, and you can email me at YouGotGotPod. No, wait. YouGotGotPod is Twitter, right? And it's all confusing. So you can follow...
0 for 2.
I know. So you can follow the podcast on Twitter at YouGotGotPod, and you can email me with any questions at YouGotGotPodcast@gmail.com. And you can also follow my personal Twitter at Sophia M. Porter. I would say it was a great episode, Kyle.
Sophia, who am I to argue with?
Thank you so much for taking the time. It was a bit longer, but I think we did a great job. Just remember, Vala Margulis, but also Vala Dohairis.
Hey.